Welcome to the show. It's Prepper Talk Radio, radio for the ready-minded, the podcast for the prepared with your hosts, Scott, Shane, and Paris. And today we have an exciting episode. We're going to talk about evacuation planning for disasters. As we know, in recent days, Southern California has had a need to know how to evacuate. And so we're going to go through some ways in planning that we can make sure that if anything happens in your area, wherever you are listening, that you'll be able to know how to evacuate the most effective and efficient way possible. But before we do, let's make sure that we remind you to jump on our website at preppertalkradio.com. And across the top, you'll see resources, challenges, you see our store. Go in there and check on those things. There's some things that are free downloads. There's also some affiliate links that you can get some great gear that we promote and we recommend, that we use ourselves, that will help you in your get your preps fully ready and stocked and ready to go. We also want to remind you about our good friends over at Jace Medical. And if you use the code PrepperTalk at Jace Medical, you'll get $10 off, I believe, and you'll get your stock of antibiotics. Also, they have routine medicines as well, Jace Daily. So it's Jace, Jase Medical. And if you go there, you could be able to get not only your antibiotics, but you also get to be able to have a supply of your routine everyday medicines that you're looking for. If it's not on the list, make sure to type it in there and submit that, because the more a drug is looked for, the more likely it is that they'll add it soon. We've had some great episodes with President and CEO of Jace. And so go back and look at those and watch those. And if you want to know more about what's going on, especially with supply chain issues and pharmaceutical issues, we're going to need to have some emergency supplies on hand. So with that in mind, brethren, how do you feel? How you doing?
I'm good. The whole world is wacky, crazy, and insane. And it shows.
Right? Oh, hey, I forgot to remember, we are live on Facebook and YouTube. So hit the like button and let the algorithm know we're on and you're enjoying what we're talking about. So thank you so much.
Well, tonight, one of the biggest reason why we're talking about this tonight is we saw what happened with the Hurricane Helene and everyone that was affected by that. And when we're seeing what happened with, and is continuing to happen with California, the Los Angeles area, the fires there, but also thinking about what happened in Hawaii a few years ago and the many lives lost in that event. When a disaster hits, if you don't have multiple ways to get out of where you are, you're in a lot of trouble immediately. As preppers, we talk about the term bugging out often. The worst idea in the world is to bug out without having a stockpiled relocation place that's out of danger and out of the line of sight of everybody else, right? Mm-hmm. If you're bugging out thinking I can just bug out and go, that you're at a whole level of insanity that you're not going to make it. But if you have a stocked place with all the stuff you need for resupply, for safety, you've got security precautions there, by all means, get there.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, you need to know when it's time to go, where you're going to go, and how you're going to get there, because road closures are real. Having been through California wildfires myself, I can attest to that. I got rerouted all the way around LA when there were fires in Diamond Bar. And this was, I don't know, 16 years ago when I lived out there. And it took us an additional 4 hours to get home. What should have been a 45-minute drive took us an additional 4 hours because we were rerouted. And then in one area, we actually got halfway through and had to stop and turn around because the fires got too close.
Oh, dang.
So it can be absolutely scary. The biggest problem we had then, we were using GPS to try to figure out where we could go because the radios weren't telling you, street signs weren't telling you. There was nothing telling us where we could go. And we were stuck using GPS to try to get out of there. And guess what? Everyone else was doing the same thing. If you know your routes and know alternate ways and have those memorized, you don't have to worry about GPS as much, right? If GPS stops working, the Palisade fire, there were some cell towers that went out and people didn't have connection. They couldn't find anywhere to get their GPS working. So you have to have another way to get out of it. And that's why we want to talk about these types of things tonight. Kind of delve into the different scenarios, delve into different things you can do. And our hearts go out to those who've been affected by this. It shouldn't have happened. but it did.
Yeah, I sorry to cut you off. Might cut you off too early, or Scott.
You're good.
All right. I think the key to bugging out, to evacuating, we'll use that word, right? Because hopefully it's just temporary. You need to get out because you don't know what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
However, if you're watching the signs, if you're vigilant, if you're aware, and you can see, you know what the dangers are around you. Like in my area, I live right on the fault line. We've got earthquake potential. I live at the base of a mountain, so potentially, we've had floods come off the mountain before. They've been fairly minor, but those are pretty easy to. I mean, the flood is pretty easy to see. Potential for flash flood. I can see the storm clouds coming. I can see they're sitting up against the mountain, just sitting there. Then the wheels should be turning in your head. Turn my head. Okay, I've seen floods come out of here before when the clouds just sit there against the mountain. What do I need to be watching out for? We had our neighborhood flooded out, a few homes anyway, in the last few months. End of last year, there were quite a few flash floods around here, and some were completely unexpected. In some homes that never happened before, and so how do we be prepared for that? How do you watch for that? And obviously, if you're going to evacuate, if you're going to bug out, key is to get out early. But how do you know to get out early? When do you make that call? Say, you know what, I got to leave. And I think I mentioned a story before, is that, we're on this lake, high mountain lake. Winds can come in pretty quick. I was watching the storm clouds come in. I made the call on the radio to my kids. Okay, bring the kayaks in. By the time they got to shore, man, it started to rain and blow. And it was a great call because I was watching. So how can we do that in as many situations, as be as successful as possible to get out in time, to not get stuck in traffic, to be just ahead? I mean, that takes a lot of coordination, a lot of luck as well. But that's really my goal, is to be out early. And when do I take that leap? When am I willing to take the risk? Like, okay, let's go. I'm calling it right now. Time to get out.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of reasons to bug out.
It's I don't even know if there's even a 1% chance that there's an accurate mathematical way to really strategize that. It's a gut feeling, right? Yeah. Or being led by the Holy Spirit, or a guess. It's one of those three.
Mm-hmm.
And a gut feeling is pretty much as good as a guess. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why, like, anyone who has a bug out location is ahead of the game, right? They've got options. As long as they exercise the option, their freedom to move to that location before something goes sideways, or as it's going sideways, right? The rest of us who don't have that, like, you've got to have alternate places you can go. Like, I've got in-laws, I've got friends, I've got redundancies of, like, okay, if something goes down in my city and I have to be out of my city, I've got somewhere I can go outside the county. If something's going on in the state, I've got somewhere I can go outside the state. But you're going to be very quickly limited if you have no networks and pre-organized, hey, if this happens, can I come to your place? And vice versa. If something happens where they are, they can come to my place. You have to have those. Otherwise, you're flying in the blind. You don't know where you're going. You don't know. You might say, I'm going to go to Bob's house, and Bob's going to be gone. Or 1,000 other people decided to go to Bob's house, and no one coordinated, and now there's no resources for 1,000 people. So you've got to take that into consideration, and you've got to know your terrain. I mean, here we have the Rockies, and so there's these walls all around us of where we can't go, right? And in the winter, you can't just put on a backpack and hike out of town. It's impossible, right? During the summer, it's hard enough, but in the winter, it's impossible. So you have to know your routes and know where you can go. So, I mean, there's so many people in the chat tonight. This is awesome. What are your plans? How do you get out? You don't have to disclose everything, but, like, what is your method and what is your idea of how to get out and what you're going to do to get out?
I think the obvious start is, 72-hour kits are pushed on, as kind of the go-to thing. Oh, I need a 72-hour kit. No, you don't need a 72-hour kit. You need something much more robust than that. Mm-hmm. And you don't need a backpack because you're not going to be walking out of your house, most likely, right? You're going to jump in your car, and your vehicle can carry a lot more than just a backpack.
Yep.
So recently in my extended family been asking questions about 72-hour kits, and of course my advice is build something much more robust and do it yourself.
Yep.
And have it in totes to where and staged to where you can have it ready to get out quickly if need be. And like you say, Scott, part of our planning is, okay, what if we only have 5 minutes? What if we have 30 seconds? What if we have 30 minutes? And prepare that list. Okay, this is what we're going to grab. Have that list handy, posted somewhere. Everybody can see, oh, if we have 30 seconds, we're just getting out. We're not grabbing anything than what's, on the nightstand or on the table. And then, obviously the more extensive list as the time gets longer, and then practice it, right? Okay, we've got, I don't know if we want to practice a 12-hour. We got 12 hours to get out. What are we going to practice? That's a lot. That's a lot of practice there, right? That's like moving the kids to an apartment or something.
Quick, run to U-Haul and get a van and bring it home and load that up too.
Yeah.
Well, I
And
think it's
hopefully-
important to, like you said, Scott, earlier, that you got to have a place to go that's fully stocked. Well, what if I'm just thinking for a minute, what if I'm barely stocked my 90-day pantry? What if how do I have another place to get stocked? That's even more money and even more planning, right? Exactly. So I would say is if you don't have another place that's stocked, what you do stock in your own home, have a portion of it that's more portable than the rest of it. So that if you do need to throw something together to put in your car, you have food for the week or a few days longer. And that way you can bug out in your car to a camping maybe spot. That's all you get is a camping spot. And if you can bring some food with you, that might be your first stage until you can get the resources necessary and be cool like Shane and have a whole property somewhere else that you can access. But in the meantime, I would say get something, build your current pantry, and then build a part of that as portable. Like I have, one of the reasons why I bought some of those 90-day freeze-dried foods from like Patriot Supply or like whatever it is that you can buy those from, is those are in totes already. They come in totes, and the Ready Man ones come in buckets. And so I can literally grab the bucket and tell all my kids, hey, grab a bucket, throw it in the car, and we'll go. And we've got a month's worth of food if we needed it. Of course, we'll, hopefully we can find water and ways to reconstitute it. But, that's just part of, there are interim plans you can make if you don't have the full plan laid out, have steps along the way to keep that plan, to keep you safe until your full plan can be initiated.
Well, if you look at the California fires and what's gone on with the residents there, how many of them are living in their cars now on whatever street parking they can find?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And they're living in their cars. And the interviews that I've seen, they don't have a change of clothes. They don't have money to go out and buy a change of clothes. They don't have money to go buy food. And there are local areas that are providing food and blankets and sanitation things, but not all scenarios are going to have that available to us. In fact, big ones aren't.
Mm-hmm.
It'll take days to get resources there. If you look at Asheville in North Carolina, like there are people who are living in tents in these crazy sub-freezing temperatures right now. And they're just barely surviving. And where's the government aid and assistance? It's all volunteer stuff that's happening, that's supporting them. And they don't have an opportunity to bug out because the rainfall was so fast, so hard, they couldn't evacuate quick enough. With the fires in California, many of them could evacuate, but there was congestion. There were people that were afraid they're going to burn to death. And in hindsight, we look at what's been going on. There's been looters. There's been 34 arrests of looters and arsons, people trying to start additional fires, right? There's so much stupidity and greed in the world that there's going to be bad elements in any disaster that are also going to cause problems for you. So you have to have the stuff you can throw in your car to go, include backpacks with that, but you have to have protection as well.
We talk a lot about bugging and just staying, sheltering in place. And obviously for a fire or flood, obviously not a good idea. But, I think when we talk about bugging out, it's more for other criminal potential, those types of events. And of course, depending on where you live, if you're urban or suburban or rural already, where you're already strategically relocated, maybe that's something that you should think about a little bit more deeply is where's your home situated right now? Are you in a potential flood zone or on a hillside in California? And maybe start making plans to get to a little bit safer place, because I don't think things are going to get better really at all. But it's quite a mental exercise to admit that you're vulnerable and need to make some changes maybe. And I think, of course, I don't believe most people are open to that whatsoever. Right? They want their convenience. They want to be where they want to be. That because of the home, because the home has a pool or whatever it might be. So it takes unique people like those who are with us tonight, right, to make those kind of changes. They may need to, or maybe have already made those decisions to live in a safer place. Like, for example, where my other property is, it's in the middle of a grassy area that's irrigated. There's little to no fire potential whatsoever. And one day, if there's no irrigation, the grass grows up and becomes a fire hazard. I built our little dwelling there. It's a Quonset hut. It's metal and it's concrete siding. So, and I did that intentionally for that purpose. So things can be done to, choose a different way to build a home.
Yeah.
A different method, instead of sticks and flammable wood, use concrete, use other materials. There's plenty of other options out there to build out there. It's just some hard decisions.
You're speaking to the choir here, but there are some people who are like, I'm going to build my house out of everything flammable, including gasoline. Right? There are levels of insanity of people doing things. I like what Mike said earlier in the chat. He said, I'm not dependent on cell or GPS to get somewhere. Second, leave early enough to get many, many miles away. And third, have financial resources to be okay. Like, you've got the financial resources to put together the Quonset fire retardant building on its own, right? Metal doesn't just catch fire. It's got to be really hot direct heat to get that to melt. It's not going to burn. But concrete, like earth block, adobe, there's so many things you can do that's fire retardant. Concrete siding. There's a house in LA that survived. The guy had a sprinkler system on his roof. There's another house that survived where he had metal roof, concrete and metal siding, and his home survived. Right? There's a few examples of that, and in a bug out location or evacuation plan, like, you've got to have somewhere to go, but you've also got to have resources to be able to get you there. A single quarter tank of gas isn't going to get you far enough away to where you're in a safe place. And how many people out there listening to this right now, if you look at your gas tank, what's your needle on?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Is it half full or is it nearly dead? Because that, I think, is one of the bigger problems. People just don't think to go around packing heavy. Your car is one of the best tools you've got in an evacuation scenario. And the more you can load up, the better. I have a pantry right off the garage door. Just empty shelves into of canned food, stuff I don't have to cook, stuff I don't have to do anything to, into the car. Boom, go.
And you've got a small utility trailer.
And I got a small utility trailer. If I've got enough time, I'll load that up too. Right? It's funny because I've got friends that get on my case because they're like, hey, how come you always leave your tow hitch on your vehicle? You're not towing very often. And I'm like, I don't want to have to try to find it and put it in my vehicle when I need it.
Yeah.
So to me, it makes more sense to just leave it on.
I like what Practical said here about a good, this is an economic way to kind of get prepared, have a storage unit that you can even get metal sheds like you're talking about and put those somewhere. And then he said something earlier that kind of really validates what you just said, Scott, sorry. The secondary location should be within one tank of gas, because you don't want to have to fuel up between where you are and your bug out location. That's just good advice. That might be a waypoint where you can go and spend a couple days, refuel, and then go on to another place.
Mhm.
But that should be all part of an overall plan. And that's the key, is having the plan in place before you need it. But I think that's a good idea, Practical. If somebody doesn't have money to maybe buy a whole property or a whole, another house somewhere, maybe just buy a shed in the back somewhere and just build it and throw some solar panels on there, or a generator or some solar power bank. That's a good, potential alternative for folks to want to, who are worried about the finances of all that bigger stuff.
Well, it's like, okay, think about the logistics of it. A 20-foot Connex you can get between $1,800 to $2,400, depending on how many uses. About $500 to $800 for delivery. And then if you go 2,000 watt solar system, I don't know the pricing on that. You're probably going to be around $4,000 in just to have power there. Maybe more, maybe less. I don't know. But then you stockpile it full of all the stuff you've got. If you don't insulate it, it's toast. It's useless anyways. But if you insulate it and keep it cool, like you can do a lot with a small Connex.
Yeah.
Right? You don't have to sleep in it. You get up there to resupply and move on to the next place. You can have bunks. You can have a tent that you pull out and everyone sleeps in the tent, or you can have fold down bunks on the wall. Like there's so many ways you could do it on the cheap. Like that's the one thing I love about preppers. There's so much of it you can DIY.
Yeah.
And one thing I wanted to mention is we were talking about planning. Of course, we talk about this all the time. Is PACE, primary, alternate, contingency, and emergency. And notice with those different steps that emergency is the last step, is the last one. Your primary, say like your cell phone. If we're talking about comms, your primary is like your cell phone, and your alternate would be maybe your ham, and then your contingency. Maybe you're driving somewhere, and then emergency. What's your emergency? And so notice that if you're prepared, that
Smoke signals.
It's not actually emergency until the last step, because you've got everything set up in between to where, okay, we're just going to move on our plan. We're going to this first step didn't work. We're going to move to the second, contingency or the alternate, and do that for every portion of your plan. Like say, I think a vehicle is extremely important as part of, obviously, this kind of fire or flood or whatever. You've got to be able to get yourself out of there with a reliable vehicle that can carry a lot. That's why Mike and I drive Tundras, right? We've got trucks that we can throw a lot of stuff in it. I, like Scott, have an enclosed trailer as well, and
So
one of the things,
somewhat ready to load it up.
I've got a mommy version of a Tundra. I've got the Sequoia.
There you go. Yeah.
Right. It's fully enclosed, 4-door, 3 rows of seats. It's got towing capacity.
Not great fuel economy. We're very practical for a lot of people, but sometimes you got to sacrifice.
In my situation, I store 1 gallon. Pardon me, not 1 gallon. I have a tanks full of gas in my shed at my property, so that I can throw that on my trailer, because I have a trailer too, a utility trailer that I feel like is a great, quick, throw it on the back of my Honda Pilot and then drive it, get food in there, put some gas in there. Then not only do I have enough gas for the tank that I normally keep a pretty full tank, and then I have a full tank, a whole second tank just of storage gas that I have. So, and then you can rotate that as you need to, different intervals whatever you feel good about. But that gives me 2 tanks of gas to get out of town. One of the influencers that I saw in LA was at a charging station, and he said, look at the line. He says, normally this parking lot is dead at this time of day, but all the ports, the charging stations are all full, and there's a line down the road. And of course, that's electric vehicles, and preppers know what electric vehicles mean. They shouldn't be part of you should have, if you're going to have an electric vehicle because you have the cash flow for that, that's fine. But always definitely still have a diesel or a gasoline vehicle too. That's going to be your bug out. But how many times have we seen emergencies and there's lines down the road on for the gas station? That's because people didn't prepare properly. And that's one of the things that I say is, if you're going to be a prepper, get your gas already, have it ready to go, get out of Dodge, fill up again. And then you might be an hour or 2, 3 hours away. There's not as big emergency and the gas lines aren't as long. And so you now have the ability to kind of take your pace, take your time. If you're stuck in a gas line, number one, you're stuck in a line for hours, but number two, you're boxed in now. Like if something really happened, you can't get out of that line in many cases. So there's just, to me, there's too many safety risks for not having some spare gas as part of your preps.
Well, and the good thing to do is I like to do this kind of every 6 months. I'll put a stabilizer in my fuel just to try to get it to last longer, but I rotate my cans. And so it's like when it's time to do my lawnmower can and my snowblower can and my generator can, I rotate it into the vehicle because they all run off unleaded. So I just I pour it into the car, put the empty container in the back of the car, drive down, fill them all up, bring them back home. Right. So I've got those tanks. What I'd love to get is a kind of a stealth panel across the top of the vehicle, a roof rack, but that's flat, and have some packs that I can click in on top. I hate having anything inside. The fumes will still get out of just about anything in gas can wise in your car. So I want to get everything attached to the exterior. That's my next vehicle modification stuff, but having it, I can throw it in the trailer and feel 100% safe. Right. I've got cots. I've got sleeping bags. I've got winter rated sleeping bags. I've got military surplus sleeping bags for everybody in the family. Right. So that I don't have to worry in the winter and I can use them in the summer. They've got bivvies. They've got 2 layers of different sleeping bags on the internal. So it's a 3-layer system that works great. So if we've got a bug out, we can use that and we can sleep in the trailer as well. Right. And I've also got a tent with a wood burning stove that also can run off of propane. And I've got propane tanks and fuel. And we've got food and clothing in the garage, not food in the garage, but clothing in containers in the garage, ready to go. I can just toss a few in the car with seasonal opportunities, different things, as well as hunting and fishing gear that's already containered that I can just slide into the back as well. So having my trailer, I can really get a long way with just the vehicles and the fuel and the resources we have. But not all cases are bug out cases, and not all, some of these things are going to be short-term things. If it's not the end of the world as we know it, it's not necessarily a bug out permanent situation. But if it's a fire, guess what? It just became permanent real fast. Yeah, you could be spared, and it could just be a couple of days you're out of your home, and then you're back. But if it hits your home, that's permanent disruption.
I think another thing to be aware and ready for is I was talking to a guy. We're going to probably have him on the show here in a couple of weeks, and one of the things that he has seen in his neighborhood is a lot more break-ins, and especially with some of these people coming over the border and getting infiltrated into different towns and cities. There's a little bit of that happening, and evacuation. If it's a fire, if it's a natural disaster, those are big, obvious evacuation things. My next question for you is, do you have an evacuation plan with your kids, especially if you have kids? If there's a burglar in the house or there's a break-in or maybe the alarm system goes off? That's something I haven't practiced in a little while. Since we moved to Utah, we had a whole plan and we practiced it in my house when I lived in California, but I haven't actually set one to play here in Utah. So that reminds me, I need to do that. But one of the things I think is that if the back door is being infiltrated, do you know how to get everybody to the front door? Or if the front door is being infiltrated, do you know how to get everybody to the back door safely? And so there's other reasons to evacuate or have a plan to get out of your house than just natural disasters. And of course, if your house catches on fire and it's just your house because your Christmas tree went up or something, not the whole neighborhood's on flames, you need to have an evacuation plan just to get out and be safe. And same thing's true with the carbon monoxide. Same thing's true with a burglary. If you have something coming at your house, somebody trying to enter your house, you got to get your kids in a safe spot and yourself in a safe spot as soon as possible. And knowing different routes to get out, knowing how to open the windows to climb up through the basement, knowing how to, jump out the window at the, first level, second level, wherever your kid or you are. You need to have an evacuation plan, I think, for those things too.
Not just knowing it, but also having the capacity to be able to do it. Do you have the physicality to be able to get out of your house?
Good point.
Or are you wheelchair bound? Right.
Yeah.
Then you have to have alternate plans. You have to figure something else out. and also thinking about, okay, important documents. If you have to evacuate your house quickly and you forget your wallet, what are you going to do? Right. Thank you. If you're watching the screen, Shane just showed his thumb drive, your
Yeah,
USB drive.
that's something I intentionally did here recently. I mean, I updated it. This lives in my go bag. Yeah, I don't really like to use the cloud, so I don't really keep a lot in the cloud. I probably should do more with that. But I went around and took pictures of all my things, right, and scanned all my important documents and so forth, and they're on this thumb drive, and that's with me all the time wherever I go. So I don't have to panic and grab the laptop or get into the safe or whatever. Yeah. Things in the safe can stay in the safe, right? Hopefully, right? Especially if it's a fire rated safe, they can stay in there. I don't have to worry too much about those, but those other important things that I need to have on me. I think this is and this is a really quality thumb drive. It's meant for some abuse. It's called a gorilla drive. I don't know. It's supposedly can hold up to more abuse than a typical. It's a little bit tougher. So,
and the reason you want that is because you need secondary sets of documents no matter what. But it's like, I have them on the cloud. I also have them on the thumb drive, and I have them in my pocket where possible. But if I don't have my wallet with me, I've still got the cloud. I can access it with my phone or another laptop or anywhere that has internet connection. But then I have my thumb drive in my go bags. And my wife and I each have one of those. What are some important other documents you guys think you should have ready to go at given notice?
I have my vehicle titles on here, my deeds, those types, passport,
birth certificates,
those types of things.
All my important contacts, all my important phone numbers, my account numbers, anything that I need to be able to access. I always have, and I need to get a new one of these because I didn't get it renewed. I need to get another credit card, a second copy of my credit card to have in a different bag. Because if something happens and I don't have my wallet, I need another way to get to it, another way to get the funds. And having those and knowing when and where I'm going to use them and why, that's part of the plan. And so if we're caught where we can't go back and get our stuff, that's the backup, right? That's
a good idea.
That's part of my pace. But I've got things, my marriage certificate, pictures of the kids, their birth date information. And I try to update those pictures on my thumb drive and on the cloud every 6 months. So every April and every October, I update mine. It's the same time I update and rotate my bug out bag stuff. And really, I'm just checking my food and alternating the clothes for seasonal specific stuff. But I'll update pictures of the kids and information about them, which is great. Just the reason I prep is so my kids have a chance. So my family has a chance. And that's the primary reason why I do everything the way I do it.
Yeah, I think something that I've probably shared this before, but I think it's a good episode to share it again. If you have kids and you teach them that they have a bug out bag, that they have a grab and go bag, make sure that the grab and go bag is not stored on the top shelf of their closet. Make sure that it's stored somewhere where they can reach it and grab it and go. I remember doing, when I was in California at my church, I offered to come to people's homes and do a little bit of emergency prep audit. And I was surprised to see how many families with small children had their kids' 72-hour bags on the top shelf of the closet. And I said, hey, you should put that down below on the ground and put other things up there, because the kid can't reach up there. Number one. Number two, if it's a fire, you don't want them standing up and grab, even if they could reach for it, you don't want them standing up and inhaling all the smoke. You want to keep them down on the ground where they can grab it and go and get out of there and maybe crawl out. So there's some things like that. I also think that it's important, if you have a fire in your home, not only have an evacuation plan, like where to get out and get to for a safe spot to meet as a family, but also teach, hey, that handle, test the handle, test the door. Is it too hot? Yeah. Okay. It's not hot. I can open it. If it is hot, I got to go to another door. also in an earthquake, if there's an earthquake and there's something that teach your kids to get up against the walls, especially the supporting walls, so that they're in that it's called the triangle of life or something like that, I think they call it. But get them at the base of the wall so that if the roof comes tumbling down, they're just going to have that pocket where they can be safe. So it's also practicing those things, I think, too, as part of your plan for whatever the disaster is going to be. And there's definitely going to be some real natural disasters, floods and fires. We're seeing that. That's real. Tsunami warnings have come recently. We've seen a couple. I think San Francisco right now is on a tsunami warning. India, for sure. Other countries have had serious, real, legit tsunamis. But I think the majority of the disasters or the things that you're going to find are going to be your personal residence is on fire. There's a burglary happening. And maybe an earthquake. So just be careful those that you're planning for all of those things, or you have a plan for all of those things.
Mm-hmm. If you're not on the live tonight, make sure you go back and read the comments on our YouTube, because there's a lot of really good advice from our group here. There's just fantastic things. One of the nice things, Practical brought this up. This is one of the reasons I use my Apple Wallet. It is secured, and it's a type of encryption. I don't know if I want to call it encryption, but it uses a spoof code, so people can't just access your credit card information. But I always carry an alternate method of payment, which is cash, multiple cards, my Apple Wallet, obviously on my cell phone, but then in my bug out bag, my get home bag, I've got additional cash and cards, right? And so having backups on backups on backups will never hurt you. It will always benefit you. But
I have gold backs in my bug out in my EDC carry bag.
Great for anywhere they're accepted, right?
Yeah. If you can get somebody to accept them. Nice.
I carry a 5-gram bar in my wallet.
How much is that worth roughly, usually?
$300-$400, something like that right now.
Nice.
Last I checked.
Shane, yeah, more than me, but here's what I carry in my wallet.
Silver bar. There we go. Some silver. Yep, absolutely.
Ounce of silver.
That's $30 right there.
But I've got another one in my bag. I've got cash. Like and then the other thing is like, okay, I look at medical needs. Like, do we need anything specific for our kids? Anything specific for my wife or myself? Any prescriptions that we're on that we can't do without? Those of you listening, you might have someone with special needs. Take those things into consideration when you're planning where and when it's time to go, because their needs are going to trump routes. If the route doesn't accommodate for places where you can stop and resupply for their needs, you need to change your route or carry more stuff.
Which is interesting. There was a movie, I don't know if you guys saw it, I think it was called Greenland. It was with, I can't remember the show, but the kid had diabetes and they wouldn't let him on. And so they had to find a way to get around that and sneak him in anyways. And so just remember that because it kind of just reiterated that nobody's going to come to save you. I mean, maybe they'll come to help you, but if they're coming to help you, that means you know what you're doing and they're helping you, not doing it for you. So that's part of the whole process of learning what you need to do to be healthy, stay healthy. In today's world, we've been so modified with all of our foods that, kids are getting diabetes now. So it's like, what do you do about that? Like, you just do your best. Have the supply, go to Jace Medical, see if you can get some of the supply medicines there, and find natural ways to get around things if you can. I know there's a lot of really good information coming out. I've seen, like, Nicole Pillion has her new book, the Apothecary, that's coming out. It has a lot of great natural ways to do antibiotics and other things. And so that's something that I ordered it, but they got my address wrong. And so they refunded me the money and I got to reorder that Nicole Pillion's most recent book on that home apothecary. But that's just to have a good library too. I think that's a good thing, not just physical books in your stash, but also have those books on digital format, like on your drive too, because, you might, the physical copy of the book burns down, but you have the digital copy because you kept a digital copy as well. So that's a good thing to do, I think, as well.
That's why I love having a big portable external drive that I can back up all my digital stuff to, and I keep that in the safe. But then if I have to bug out and I don't remember to get to the safe, that stuff's gone to me, right?
Yeah.
So it might be nice for me to at some point get a secured cloud connection that I can store some of that in. But I've got a lot of it isn't stuff that I really care that much about, but it's stuff that I want to be able to resource back to in case the video ever gets taken down.
Mm-hmm.
Skills training. I think the more you know how to do, the more you can do or have figured out, the less you have to carry.
Mm-hmm.
Right. The less you know, the more you have to carry. Knowledge and skill set outperform any kit you can ever buy. And if you can continually learn and spend less time scrolling and more time practicing what you've learned or learning new things that'll help you, the better off you're going to be. It has been laughable. I look back at, I'm going to bash on the Boy Scouts here. I look back at what I went through as a scout to get my Eagle was brutal. It was hard. I had to learn a lot of new skills. And as a scoutmaster, well, I wasn't the scoutmaster, I was the assistant. As the assistant scoutmaster, I cannot tell you how many times I was told lay off when I was trying to teach the kids hard skills. No, if they're here, it counts. They'll get their badge if they're here. Oh, so it's a participation trophy now. They will not learn anything that they can then go use later if they don't practice it and apply it. If they're not forced to do it, when the time comes and they need to be able to do it, they won't be able to do it. Something as simple as starting a fire. A lot of these scouts didn't know how to do it. Most of them didn't get their Eagle because of that. They weren't willing to actually learn enough, and they didn't show up every week.
Mm-hmm.
Kids who did, I feel confident and comfortable with, but there were kids that showed up every week that didn't participate but still got the merit badges. And I'm like, what did they learn? Nothing. So if you can be learning and growing, the cool thing about knowledge is it helps you problem solve any scenario that comes your way. The more you know, the more you've experienced, the more you've encountered, the better equipped you are for anything that comes your way.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like something that you might be studying and feel like it's completely unrelated to something else. But then down the road in a month, you're like, oh, wait a minute. What I learned applies and I can actually help. It's crazy how sometimes things that you think are totally unrelated are actually very helpful and totally related.
Well, it's like a corporate pizza party doesn't really help much with morale. So will it help in a survival scenario? Well, if you can find a Domino's when everything else is gone and you can get your pizza, it might help with morale, right? The things you learn in different aspects of life, you've got to figure out, can it apply? And a lot of crap doesn't apply. But survival skills, learning those skills, those actually can apply to the workspace. It teaches mental toughness. It teaches stick-to-itiveness, right? It teaches you to think outside of the box. But it doesn't flip the other way all the time. The corporate skills don't necessarily equate to any life skill or survival skill that you're going to need.
Yeah, another thing, a comment I saw a while back that I wanted to comment on is obviously paper maps.
Mm-hmm.
I just actually went through my vehicle, noticed my maps were looking pretty ragged, and I just replaced those. The gazetteer, the DeLorme gazetteers you can buy on Amazon, a full book of your state, right, of wherever you need to go to get out. And hopefully the roads well enough you don't need them, right? But if you need to find alternate routes, it's awfully nice to have a paper map, especially when you don't have signal, or potentially have an app where you can download. I know there's some apps where you can download the content. You can download the maps and don't need an internet. And of course, your GPS will work regardless, but you still have to have those maps downloaded to your phone or whatever device you have. So, but just being able to read and use a map, especially with a compass. And I know I've noticed some comments here where potentially moving to a new area, don't know the area, it's going to be a learning experience. Get a map, get a compass, and learn how to triangulate your position, and find out exactly where you're at. That's an invaluable skill, and I think it's a lot of fun as well, and provides a lot of confidence.
So I'm holding up my recent Boy Scouts of America handbook, the spiral bound version, which is awesome. It shows you a lot of orienteering. It shows you a lot of land navigation techniques, nighttime, daytime, how to do it. Even better is my 1930s, 1940s. My super old one. Sorry, 1950s. My 1950s Boy Scouts of America has even more. They've stripped stuff out, and it's crazy. Like, it's a smaller book. It's thinner than the new one, just a little bit, but it has more stuff, more relevant stuff. The newer one is great too. Get whatever you can, but learn land navigation, learn how to use maps, learn what the key is, learn how to orient it, get a compass. Also, what's your communications plan in a disaster? That's so overlooked. So many people forget that.
And of course, first aid as well. In emergency events, first aid, emergency services are going to be overwhelmed. So you are your first and likely only help. So having first aid supplies in your go bags as well, in your kits, in your totes, however you're doing that is very important as well. Yeah. Quick, easy.
In a perfect scenario, we can tell the disaster, please don't happen between the hours of this time and this time when my kids are at school.
When you're asleep.
Make sure the disaster happens when I'm ready, when my kids are home, and we can all just bug out together. The disaster comes when it comes, and so that's important. Like if my kids at the high school, or my daughter's at the junior high or whatever, at the elementary school, I need to be able to communicate with them and say, hey, or even get to them and say, we're out. So especially those with kids and most people, I hope, who are listening here have a family or loved ones that they want to communicate with. And you're right. That's critical. And we might have a resource that we have available soon for something like that. Here is on one of our episodes here coming up soon. So it's a little teaser on that.
I don't know what you're talking about, but if you want to get your ham radio license, go over to hamradioprep.com, use the code PrepperTalk, and you can save and check out.
Yes. Yeah, what's your status, you two, on your ham radio licenses?
I took the practice test. Oh, I bombed. I'm done with the school. I took the practice test and I bombed. I'm like, okay, it's been too long since I did the first half of the studies, and so I've got to recommit and go deeper, because I knew you were going to ask, and so
you guys brought it up. So I'm going to.
I took the test and I was like, oh, I gotta prep some, but we're close. I've at least completed all the educational components.
No comment on my progress.
Yeah. Cool. Come on. But the other part of it too is like, what method are you going to use to communicate back and forth? Right? Phones, if cell towers are plugged up or burnt down, you're not an option. Then you want to go somewhere out with, like, either, if it's just car to car and it's a convoy of people that you're connecting with, GMRS is great, CB is great. If you want to go farther, obviously you got to go hamtastic and definitely get something better than this. This is the Baofeng GMRS, whatever, not GMRS, UV5R
channels on there, right? You can do GMRS with it as well. But
yeah, but the UV5R is a ham. It's a small solution to a bigger problem. And I'm not the guy to ask what the right radios to get are. That would be the guy below me on the video. That is Shane, aka our resident Burt Gummer. He's much more knowledgeable on radio.
Yeah, we had a guest, Joseph, who was on our show not too long ago talking about community comms, and so he's
on here tonight.
Yeah, he's on here tonight. I saw him earlier, and then he's also in our group on Facebook. So if you want to jump on there and get to know some of the folks like that, it's just so many good resources.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, obviously comms are very important, especially if you got family and you're trying to coordinate. Most of my family is in the valley; they're nearby. We text like madmen. It's just constantly texting, and texting is actually better than using a phone during an emergency because it uses up less bandwidth, right? So you make that more your priority. Maybe that's your primary method of communication, but obviously radios are going to be probably more reliable in many situations. But again, have not been able to get many of the family on board, so they're just going to miss out, right? They're going to be the ones not having the information they need, but but just having a radio, just an AM/FM radio, right? One of those
Mm-hmm.
emergency radios, the couple of different brands, that have the cranks on them or have solar panels on them. I think those are great. Or some of the smaller world band radios, so you can at least get information. And don't necessarily need to communicate, but to have good information, to know where to go, to know when to come back home, maybe when you can, just be able to at least receive is going to be important.
That's awesome. Totally true. Anything else you guys want to discuss on evacuation
Final
planning?
thought recap for me: 1, put your plan on paper. Write it all down. Where am I going to go if I need to get out of the city? Where am I going to go? Identify all the different routes I can take to get there, so that I know and I don't have to use GPS to get there, and then practice driving those routes. Number 2, backups on backups on backups. Number 3, pack heavy. You're not walking out on foot, hopefully not. If you have to, then obviously modify your situation, but go heavy. Put as much stuff in the vehicle as you can get, and make sure everyone's safe, and then make sure you have your comms and your first aid.
Nice. How about you, Shane?
Yep.
Any last minute thoughts, Shane? Wrap up?
No, just when it comes down to what's really important, I don't worry too much about the expense, right? If I have that vision where I'm looking forward and I can see potential outcome, because that takes practice, that takes a willingness to admit that things can go wrong, that not everything's going to potentially be rosy in the future, and go out on a limb a little bit. Obviously, if financially you can, and prepare to, if you live in an area where it's prone to fires, get ready to get out. Have it, get a little small enclosed trailer or something like what you have, Paris, just a flatbed trailer, or whatever provisions you think you need in order to get your family safe. I think it's worth it. I think not everybody needs a bug out place. Not everybody needs their own bug out place, but they can share a bug out location with grandma, with your parents.
Yeah.
And so, take that as a fun time to hang out with. It's not an emergency if you're prepared, right? I've said that a million times, and just take advantage of it and get out early, watch the signs, and don't hesitate to make a tough call, because you can always make another decision, right?
Yeah.
If you're caught in the danger, decisions will be much harder, right? If you're caught in the flames and you have one or two ways out, those are some hard decisions. The earlier you make decisions, the easier they're going to be.
100%. Well, I agree. I think that the sooner you can have a plan in place for whatever disasters you can conceptualize happening, I think the better. I think also it's important, and something that I would love to even hear and probably what I'll do is do a little bit of research on these folks who've just gone through some emergencies and what lessons did they learn from that? And let's learn from their mistakes, or let's learn from their experiences so that we don't have to. That's something that I think is important. Make sure that you have your resources in place ahead of time before you need them, and have them accessible. I just realized the other day, I shared with you earlier that I have some totes of food. Well, on Saturday, I was looking in my closet where those totes are, and there's like a bunch of boxes on top of them. So I'm like, that's not accessible. So this Saturday, I'm going to go clean up organize my closet a little better. But thank you so much for listening. Thanks for being on the show with us. Thanks for being live here. If you're listening later, thanks so much for downloading it and listening it. We're super excited to be able to share some of the thoughts that we have about preparedness, from job loss to zombie apocalypse and everything in between. And we're just grateful that you're listening and that you're part of our journey. And we just hope that we're providing value. Make sure you go to our website, preppertalkradio.com. If you click on the resources tab, it'll actually ask you to enter your email address, and that'll put you on our email distribution list. And we're sending out emails on a regular basis with updates, information, tips, tricks, all kinds of fun things. So make sure you're part of that. And make sure that you're staying ready. You've been listening to the radio for the ready-minded, and you're here because you're ready-minded. We're the podcast for the prepared, and we want to make sure that you're prepared. And we'll see you on the next one. Have a great week, guys.
See you next week.
Good night.